Anu, good morning. Good to have you back.
Good morning, Vinod. Nice to be here. I feel like we have a great conversations, and they end up pushing buttons, which makes me happy.
I think when I have a conversation with you, I don't have to worry too much because you'll take care of the stage.
You're very kind with providing me a stage too.
No, I honestly also think I think you are very talented from that perspective in terms of using the right words and the right sentences, and you're also quite knowledgeable in the topics that we usually talk about. So that makes it for a great listening experience for viewers and for myself. I enjoy talking to you. So good
Yes,
to have you
hey,
here again.
we
Yeah.
have insightful. You bring out a sort of extemporaneous shall we say, you bring out a manner of speaking that I'm not usually able to do because I'm usually interviewing other people. And so but hey, the diction comes from reading a lot, so I highly recommend reading a fuck ton of books to whoever is.
Yeah, I'm gonna take upon that advice if I have to be half as good as you. Okay,
Rewatch.
cool. I think. Sorry, yeah, you were about to say
No, no, no,
something.
go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I think the last time we spoke, I forgot, was it probably Feb or March? I don't recall, but I think you ended with a very important quote that I thought we should touch upon. It can be a bit controversial, but that's how we talk. You said you would have loved to get married, have a couple of children, and be a stay at home mom. And you said feminism is light to women, that career is probably the better option than staying at home. I think was it, did I capture what you said accurately? You want to go a little into that?
See, okay. I don't know that I'm meant for children, right? Rather, that I am meant to be a stay-at-home mom just because of the type of person I am and the sort of things I enjoy thinking about and my general cognitive orientation toward the world. I'm in communication and thought process, though not actual thought. I am closer to men than I am to women. That said, though, that's just my external orientation in the world. Despite that, feel things very deeply. So I have this balance of masculine and feminine energies inside of me. I mean, at certain stages of my life, the feminine was dominant and like emotional chaos and all these things. And then I started writing and sort of leaning on my analytical cognitive mode more. And so I started succeeding in my career in a way that I did not think I would. But I guess if I had thought that staying at home and having children was even a viable option, or even potentially less stressful than the career I currently have, which is in technical consulting, like leading a team, whatever, then I might have considered it. But I guess one reason I also didn't consider it is because in Indian culture, women are very much pushed to get married and have a kid or multiple kids, and then your life ends up being subsumed by your family and your in-laws, and I just wasn't about that life. I mean, feminism I was first attracted to because of the way girls were treated in my family, whether that be in America or in India. Because I come from, part of my family is Gujarati, my mother's half, and the women in my mother's side of the family treated all the girls like pretty, they tried to control my mother's movements, and my aunt's movements were very controlled. I was controlled by my mother and grandmother, and so I saw feminism as a sort of escape from what did feel like legitimately patriarchal constraints. And now notice I'm not even naming men here. It was women doing the patriarchal enforcement. So I did not see it as a viable option really at all because I had seen that life destroy women from the inside. And so it's a grass is always greener type thing, right? We always think it's going to be better. Like women who stay home that I know, like my friends of mine who I studied with in college who stay home, have contacted me being like, "Hey, how do I enter this particular field?" And I struggle to tell them anything because I don't even know how to begin to explain to a stay-at-home mother who's never really worked in the professional, the white-collar space, how to even enter it. I have tried with very little success to help, but it's incredibly difficult. So if you make that choice initially, it's very difficult to go into the working world. If you start out in the working world, then you might end up losing your childbearing years to work. And then you maybe want to go have a family and stay at home and things, but then you have to take care of your parents who are aging. So women who work and have children end up being squeezed by the children and the parents. So a woman has no good choices, in my opinion. Hold on, hold 1 second. My cat is. I need to do a cat switching thing. You
Okay.
leave it recording. I'll be right back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I struggle to give women advice really about this because you kind of get trapped, and this is the problem with women's equality, is that the equality actually brought us a different kind of trap, which is like you do one thing and you feel like you're missing out on the other thing. So you end up doing everything kind of half-assedly, because women will admit that if they have kids and they have small children at home, they're not going to work in the same way because your brain and your body are completely different. So why would you be able to work in the same way? But we need to maintain this fiction that we're all working equally hard, even if childless women are, in my opinion, end up working harder just to pick up the slack for women who have children at home, who have small children at home, because they get to leave at 4:30, and I have no excuse to leave at 4:30. Though men are trapped here too. I think this is a managerial capitalism problem, because men get trapped by their careers as well. They end up missing out on their children's lives as a result of climbing, right? So if they have wives who are staying at home taking care of kids, there's pressure on them to climb and make enough money to keep paying for the increasing cost of living. So they also miss out on their kids' lives, and the women feel unfulfilled unless they find some other thing to do on the side. And I think this is partially why so many women are in doing their own business outside of the corporate space, wellness culture, therapy, all these things. But then, of course, wellness culture produces its own pathologies. So.
A couple of things. I'll probably go into the first one that you mentioned about. You said, particularly in the Indian context, the mothers, grandmothers, or aunts. You said women are generally controlled. Can you explain what you meant by that?
I mean that. So for my mother and her sisters, they were not allowed to be out after dark or after 7. They weren't allowed to hang out with men in any capacity. They weren't allowed to really have any fun, like have any kind of life. Now, granted, my mother also, both my parents came from poor families, but even in my generation, the girls in the family were not given love by my grandmother in the way that the boys were. She coddled the boys to the extent that I would say that my grandmother coddling her sons and then her grandsons led to worse outcomes for all of them. Coddling is not good for men, because you just let them do whatever they wanted. Similarly, keeping women under such strict control because their chastity is the family's honor, like that's why women do it to each other within the same family. In fact, the biggest enforcers of patriarchy are not very often men as direct enforcers. So India is an interesting situation, right? Like where if a woman is moving around in public, I don't know if this is different now because I haven't been to India in like 8 years, but I highly doubt this is different. If a woman is moving around in public, men are just going to stare at her, and there's just a male colonization of public space. I highly doubt that's changed in a decade, right? There's a reason there are female-only train cars, right? So that hasn't changed. So there is a good reason to be afraid of what men might do out in public. But at the same time, there is an assumption that if a woman is given any freedom, she's going to go out and get pregnant. Like, that's why my mother kept me under lock and key. I wasn't allowed to have friends, really. Like, I wasn't really allowed to socialize. When I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend or even talk to boys, be friends with them or anything. So my first sort of experience socializing with boys was in college, but keeping me under lock and key had a sort of the opposite effect of what she intended. She didn't trust her daughter's judgment, and neither do many women trust their daughter's judgment to, not fuck around and get pregnant and maybe give them a little bit of freedom. And I find this to be kind of frustrating. I find it to be strange that you would just have a kid and then not trust that kid's judgment at all. Now, I know I was a kid. Sure, maybe I wouldn't have made the right decision anyway, but not giving me the freedom to try and fail, just it ended up backfiring at the end of the day. And so many women who grow up in Indian families end up having mental health issues because they don't get to have any freedom, and they're required to take care of everybody, especially if you're the eldest daughter.
I actually want to understand this a little deeper, because I see this as one of, let's say, the common explanations from a lot of women on Twitter too, on X currently, whatever they call it. I genuinely want to understand what actually goes through a typical girl's mind, the adolescent ones, the one who came of age and is in the reproductive age, which is when they are typically told, don't do this, don't do that. What goes on inside them from this, let's say, 12 to 18, that they feel they don't have any freedom? I want to understand their psyche.
Okay, so meaning the freedom the lack of freedom may be imagined, or the lack of freedom just is a fact, and how does that make you feel internally?
No, I'm not saying that. I do think that there is some truth to what women are saying, that yes, they are told to not do certain things.
Yeah.
I completely understand, right? But I want to understand if that's, let's say, too much of an issue enough for them to worry about, or are they making a mountain out of a molehill?
Oh, yeah.
And I also want to understand, how does it feel for that adolescent girl when she's just trying to figure out the world and how men are, how women are, etc. I want to understand how bad she feels actually at being, let's say, restricted from doing certain things. It could be dressing, it could be not going out, it could be sitting in a certain way. I mean, these are told to women, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to understand how that feels, and why is it causing them frustration or resentment?
It's removing the freedom of self-determination. Now, I'm not saying that you let your kid do whatever, right? If I had been going out and I don't know, actually, like if I had been 12 and had gotten a boyfriend, I mean, I still don't think that the culture would have led me to have sex at 12. You know what I mean? Like, the fear is that a girl is going to get a boyfriend as a teenager and then have sex and go do drugs, which just completely is disconnected from any truth of that girl's interior. I was a bookish kid. I wasn't going to go out and no boy was even gonna like me. Forget going and having a boyfriend. The bigger issue, I think, was that growing up in Indian in America in the 90s, American culture was seen as very libertine. So the picture painted of American culture for me was sex obsessed and all any man or boy wants to do is get in your pants and you have to be careful, blah blah blah. There was no leash, there was no leeway to actually go and make a mistake. The assumption is if you give any leeway, she will go make a mistake, and that feels like shit. It was like I was in a prison of my mother's making, and there's little reason for it. There's nothing to indicate that I would actually take that freedom and abuse it. Now, if you see all the girls around you getting more freedom than you and I of course saw the white girls getting way more freedom than me, being able to listen to whatever they wanted, watch whatever they wanted. If a show came on with kissing Like my parents would freak out and make me turn it off. So, and these are like teenage dramas in America that had kissing in like the 2000s. It was ridiculous. Um, and there's just a sort of shame about sex that's built into you and so then that ends up hampering you later in life because you're ashamed about sex when you have to like go be in a relationship, which has all sorts of psychological impacts. So if I had to recall what the teenage self of mine felt, it was wanting the freedom to try something and fuck up, and like wanting the freedom to like go have friends and to go socialize. Because if you keep your daughter under lock and key, she will not have friends. Like if your intention is to stop her from having sex, she'll just not have friends. Period. That'll be what it is. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's different in India now. I'm sure things have liberalized in India. It's that the Indians who emigrate to America carry or at least my generation, the parents of my generation carried 1970s India. The IT Indians from the 90s carry 1990s. So we freeze India in our mind, we bring it here and we say, oh, this is Indian culture, and girls get the brunt of it. There's a lot of therapists out there, actually, like Indian American women therapists now who specialize in working with Indian American women in particular because we're so fucked up. And we're so fucked up because of the conservative culture that came with our parents.
So that's an interesting point. So what do you think then is a reasonable parenting in such a way that these adolescent girls feel a little bit of freedom while making the right choices? What do you think that situation is going to look like for Indian girls?
You could explain the consequences of fucking up, right? Like, I was never given a sex talk. Maybe you should talk to your kids a little frankly about sex and like call it a normal part of life. If Indians want to raise well-adjusted kids, maybe they should stop being so ashamed of sex. That's a really big, like, what do you call it? Elephant sitting in so many families is like the inability. It's not about sex, the act. It's about the interior that we have as people. Like how much of the conflict in Indian families comes from being unable to speak openly about your feelings, which Indian families just don't prioritize that, as far as I understand, right? If you are more focused on the collective and the group, and like individualism is not the way you exist in a family, which is the case for Indian families by and large, then of course you're not going to ask your kids about their feelings. Like, this actually begins with asking your kids how they feel about any particular thing. I'm not saying to just like coddle them and let them do whatever they want, but when it comes time to, like, for puberty, maybe like we should assume that girls want to have boyfriends and like boys want to have girlfriends, and just let it happen. Just fucking let it happen. Like, stopping them does nothing. It makes them rebel even harder whenever they get freedom. Like it happened to me. Like I rebelled really hard when I got into college. I spent my 20s having almost no discernment about men at all. And that was because I wasn't allowed to socialize with them until I was 18.
It's almost like that revenge tourism, as they call it, or anti-restricted movement. So people just freak out and do whatever they want.
If my parents knew what my life is actually like today, or how I even got here, I mean, they know maybe 5% of me as a person. So if you insist on restricting your kids, the price you're going to pay is not knowing them as people. So you're going to have to pick. You want to know your kids as people, as human beings, full human beings, because when they become adults, they're not going to suddenly flip a switch. If you were strict with them when they were children, they're not going to want to tell you things. Like my mother has no idea about my interior life. Neither does my father, nor does any of my family. But girls have such rich interior lives that the adults around them don't care to ask them about.
Oh man, that hit me hard, whatever you said right now. People don't know more than 5% of their daughters, or they don't know her as a person. Yeah, it could probably be true in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
I don't know, when I asked my daughter how does she feel about herself. She's 17. I mean, I probably have to go and ask after this call.
Wait, so yeah. So I mean, I get the sense that you raised your kids in a bit more of a liberal fashion, and that you care about what they think as human beings. Judgment.
I don't know, but honestly, I've had talks related to sex, related to promiscuity and other things with my daughter and son quite openly. And she's asked me basic questions like, why is it that you guys are allowed to do whatever you want, whereas we girls cannot have, let's say, multiple boyfriends, for example. And then I gave her the logic, the history bit of it. I said, this is my perspective. Now you're free to then absorb whatever I'm saying, and then you form your own opinions on that. So I don't push my agenda. I just say these are the reasons: scientific, evolutionary, and biological. After that, it's up to you.
There are biological and evolutionary reasons that women have fewer partners because we have to be more discerning in who impregnates us because, well, we have to raise the kid until 18. But after birth control is invented, this ends up getting scrambled. So what do you do, right? There's nothing stopping a woman from having multiple partners. In fact, women are often lying about their body counts because it's easier to have sex as a woman than it is to have sex as a man, because you don't have to go looking for it. It's just there. Like, all you have to do is like potentially just say yes. And that's actually a big part of the problem too, is that you end up, so that the flip side of that is you don't have discernment, because how we are raised is, even as we might be raised sexually conservatively, we are also given the message that men are always looking at us. Men are always objectifying and sexualizing us, whether this be in India or in America, right? In India, it is negative in the sense that, actually, no, in both places, I get the message that men will always objectify and sexualize you. But in America, and even in probably, much of urban India now, how much of online culture is built on women getting attention? You and I talked about this. We've talked about this in other contexts, but we have been told by our parents and elders that men will always try to take advantage of you. Then we've been told by society, like the ambient culture, that a woman's greatest value is in her physicality. And we are rewarded by that. We were rewarded for that, algorithmically speaking, on Instagram or wherever. And if you're rewarded for your physicality constantly in an ambient fashion, of course you're gonna be addicted to attention and try to take advantage of that, because male attention is cheap and destabilizing. And that's the thing that I wish I had understood, is that male attention is cheap when I was doing it.
Yeah, it is literally inexpensive. Men don't really care as long as it is a woman. I keep telling this point to my daughter and a couple of other women that I have discussions with on, let's say, sleeping around, for example. And I tell them, I go into a room, and if there are 100 men, and a woman puts up her hand and says, who wants to sleep with me? I can bet 99 or even 100 out of 100 will raise their hands, irrespective of how she looks. She could be as ugly as whatever, right?
Well, isn't there a floor of how, like, if for men it seems like a binary thing. There's no grading happening. It's not a 0 to 10 grading system.
So it's like the way men's thinking wired is like, okay, what's there to lose? It's not like, should I have sex? It's like, theek hai, it's okay. See, this is funny when I say it, but when I this is actually what men think, but they don't tell it out because they'll get cancelled, or somebody might, I don't know, admonish them for saying that. But this is how men think, most of them, and in fact all of them, right? You reverse the situation, and then you go and have like women standing there, and then if a woman says, a man says, I want to have sex with you, there are 100 women, which one want to have? It's going to be the reverse. Not a single woman is going to raise her hand. Maybe one.
She's going to,
even if that guy is super hot.
Well, she's going to be judged by all the women around her, so she can't.
Exactly. And they did this as part of a research in the US, by the way. I'm not making it up.
Oh, I see.
This was done in a college environment. I can't recall the research, but I can look it up and put that in the description later. But people did that as a research. Like, would you do this? And then almost all the women said no.
Because in private or in public?
In public. And this study was done even in private. It was more like an anonymous question. Even in that, they said no.
Well, because the status matters, right? The level of the sperm quality matters, like the biology does matter. So in this case, even if a woman might literally deny that biology matters, it's actually not so much a straightforward status calculation. It could be, yes. It could be a status calculation, but I don't think that even if the man indicated high status in his like presentation, that a woman would just be like, "Oh yeah, like he looked high status enough. Let me go," because you're gonna want to evaluate his actual life before you like I guess if you're okay with just I don't know, casual relationships. But even then, even if you're privately okay with a casual relationship, in public, you cannot be okay with it, right? You can't say you're okay with it. And actually,
Yeah.
that's because, okay, so this is why I don't write about sex ever, because I know it would attract the wrong kind of attention. I have a lot to say about it, but I'll never write about it. One, women will judge me for it. Two, men will read me for the wrong reasons for it. So I just don't. It's the same sort of principle where women will think you are a whore or whatever, and they will then fuck with your reputation behind your back. I've seen this happen. It happened to me, even though I wasn't sleeping with anyone more than anyone else around me was. I just was less ashamed of it. You know what I mean? Like I was. Oh, and I was in I was in stoner culture. There was a big judgment about that, of course. That was actually there was more judgment about smoking weed than there was about having sex, which is funny.
Yeah. So this is the interesting point, right? I mean, you mentioned about birth control, and birth pills came in what 1960s, 70s, maybe if I recall. 1970s, I think, right? I mean, one of the greatest inventions ever that set women free. Now, in spite of that, and women knowing that there's no repercussions to them, I mean, they're not going to get pregnant nowadays. They can still have sex and be fine with it, but they still are a little discerning compared to the men. And it has to be only evolutionary and biology. I don't see any reason for it. And
Yeah.
a lot of the times when I speak to quite a few women here, I mean, maybe 30s and 40s, and I think slandering and also calling the other woman a bitch, is one of the most common things I've heard.
Just
I
because
don't think they. Yeah, I mean, this is what, oh, she's a nice girl, but, and there's always a but that comes.
yes, always.
Immediately, I don't know, I mean,
Yeah.
hundreds of reasons for it. Yeah, but that's
Well, it's
just the
delivered.
wiring.
It's delivered in very soft language. It will.
Yeah.
It'll be like, "Oh, she's a nice girl, but I'm concerned about her behavior. It might get her into trouble," like that sort of thing. Right? But it is reputational slander, right? And this is normal, right? I don't expect women to behave any other way because yes, we have to be more discerning because we need a man with resources to raise the kid, even if we have our own resources. That biologically
Yeah.
ingrained sort of concern doesn't go away. And then on the other woman's end, she's going to observe a woman having sex and not like giving a shit about it, and she's going to be envious of whatever attention that woman gets. In college, I was mocked not for myself. I was mocked for the quality of the guy that happened to like me. Right? I had nothing to do with it. This was like some, whatever, some the friend groups will eventually, it eventually goes around like so and so likes so and so, right? But the woman will be mocked based on the perceived social status of the man who likes her,
Wow.
even if she doesn't like him back.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. I also think that women intuitively know that the quality of the mate that she's able to attract with kind of indirectly, I don't know, there's some kind of let's say equation to that it kind of puts a good value to her as well. I think innately she knows it.
Well, women compete based on the mate value of their spouses too. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the husband is like a Birkin bag, also. Like the status of the husband is like a luxury good. I mean, it's the same thing. And men do this too, though. Men will compare their own spouses among each other, and they will do. I mean, I imagine, and I think my husband has confirmed this. So what I'm saying is, both parties use the other party as a source of social capital in homosocial relationships. A woman will use the man as social capital among her girlfriends, and the opposite happens for men.
Yeah, I think that's true. So one of the things I actually want to go a little deeper into is related to what we just discussed, about this career woman versus, let's say, a housewife or a home worker. Usually people say, oh, women should have their own choices. Yet, what I largely observe, at least on the vocalized radical feminist, is that, oh, she's a housewife, oh, poor little thing. She must be struggling. She must be in bonded labor. I never understand why they vilify these housewives so much. I mean, as a man, I love housewives. I don't have an issue. Yes, you can go and work if you want. It's up to you. But there's nothing wrong with being a housewife. In fact, it's a very complicated, difficult job. It's management bundled into a home. It's not easy. And I've seen some of them are so great at it, which I don't think I can be. The number of phone calls that they make to these, I don't know, hundreds of calls they make. Oh, can you get this done? Can you get that done? Bring it at 11 o'clock today. So there's so much going on. It's fabulous just to see the way they network. Yet, these feminists who work in particular vilify these, non-working poor females. Oh, you're slavery. Why is that?
Because domestic work has been devalued. My most straightforward, like, that's part of it. In the 70s, when we had the sort of second wave feminist revolution in America, domestic servants were no longer affordable. In India, you guys still have domestic labor. So, the rich housewife might be able to outsource some of the manual labor. But household labor in general is considered less, like, lower status than corporate labor working for somebody else. Like making your own home better is considered lower status than going and making money for someone else in a fucking office. What is funny though, now that several feminist friends of mine are in their late 30s and they've worked for, I don't know, 15 years, they're tired and they're like, oh, I just want to find a rich man so I can stop working, which is the most anti-feminist thing they could possibly say. But they say it with total seriousness. And I get it. I mean, I don't blame them. I get it. I don't think women are supposed to be constantly in this managerial mode. So okay, let me give you my situation. I haven't been working since May. And I realized that all of my emotions were buried and blunted, and I couldn't really feel anything while I was working. I was just suppressing all of it because I had to behave like a man out in the world. I had to have a masculine self out there. Now, of course, I have sort of masculine cognitive tendencies where I get coded masculine in the working world despite being a woman. So the same reason that I do well in the working world is the same reason that men and women in the working world dislike me very often, because my personality is differential. But then I stopped working and I stopped having to be a man in the world, and I realized there was all this like buried emotion that just like I couldn't. I spent maybe a week sobbing, and I had stopped dancing. I do Kathak and Bollywood, and I just stopped going. I picked it back up finally because I feel like I felt like I could move, and I had the desire to make my domicile nice suddenly. It's as though I became a housewife without really even intending to become one. I mean, I plan to keep working, but I'm very likely not gonna go back to work for other people. And that's the other thing, right? So is this sense where is my desire to go off on my own and work for myself, is that just me taking my natural-ish feminine inclination to not go out and be a man in the world and like making something of that? Am I just trying to have it both ways? Probably I am. And I think more women would probably be happier doing their own independent business of some kind. Okay, so many corporate women I know my age, and just in general, there is a trend of just starting your own consulting business. Just whatever area you're in, just be on your own, don't work for anybody, because that allows you flexibility and to have a life and to feel your feelings. Because so managerial capitalism, which for those who've not really who've not thought about this or are unfamiliar, managerial capitalism is a post-industrial way of managing resources and efficiently creating things. in our knowledge economy, managerial capitalism doesn't really create things so much as create shitty software that isn't around in 10 years. But it has to, the sort of perfect, efficient systems that had to arise in the post-industrial age to make sure that goods were bought at a predictable pace, that managerial capitalism has now morphed into a sort of therapeutic managerial state. It's fused with the government in America. At least, I mean, I don't purport to know about India, but corporations and the government in America are fused, and the engine runs partially based on women's labor and women believing that a career in corporate America will liberate them and give them some kind of self-determination. On the other factor, which we may have discussed last time, is credentials. So women, women have not been educated for the entirety of human history. Women being highly educated is a very modern phenomenon, and like very modern, late 20th century phenomenon. So we haven't even really gotten used to it. Now, all these corporations needed credentialed workers. Women, especially, they needed more workers as the economy expanded, and women needed to be able to enter the workforce and be considered qualified. So that's where credentials were supposed to help them get some freedom. In India, right, girls in many parts of India are not educated. Education is considered a means of freedom and self-determination. But then education ended up being a trap, because if you spend enough time in college and graduate school, then you've wasted away your, fertile childbearing years. But separately, you've also placed too much of your own personal capital in the idea of being an educated woman who deserves such and such kind of a job. Hold that thought. My cat needs to be let out. 1 second. Okay, back. I feel
Yeah. Yeah, go on.
No, that was it. That was a long soliloquy.
No, that was pretty interesting from multiple angles. I think one of the parts where I'm still struggling to think, or let's say understand what you explained, is the part on the social capital and the fact that an educated woman has the advantage but also has lost something. I'm not able to understand what you were trying to explain there.
Yeah, so what we've gained is credentials sort of opened up whole aspects of the economy that were closed to us before. So
that's a good thing, right?
Right? It's a good thing. But then we ended up fusing our own self-worth with the credentials we got. So, right? Like, credentials are a means for women to compete. We also tend to put more faith in them to get us through shitty economic periods. So during the financial crisis of 2008, women of my generation, including me, stayed in graduate school, or rather stayed and got graduate degrees because we wanted to wait out the shitty economy. And even after that, when people, the economy, you're still struggling to get jobs unless you are in engineering, and even then you might have struggled. The shall we say, higher education industrial complex, so the whole system of higher education, needs us to believe that credentials are the path to increase security. Men are less likely to fall for this trap because you all have a more individualistic attitude to begin with. Women, evolutionarily speaking, have a more collectivist attitude to begin with. It's why we make friends with each other more easily, because we have to cooperate. We have to cooperate with each other. We are not encouraged to be individualistic out in the world. And if a woman is individualistic out in the world, other women are going to pull her back. And men are probably going to pull her. Men are probably going to do the same thing. But especially women are going to do that. So if men have more freedom / self-belief to go make it in the world without credentials. Mark Zuckerberg and all these college dropout people who made all these companies would never have been women. If they had been women, then they wouldn't have dropped out of college, because that's a risky move. Men have a higher risk tolerance. And so, of course, women are going to put stock in all of these credentials as being a sort of lower, like, way to reduce your risk in going out into the world on your own. Because if you're going to say, I don't want to get married, then you better have something you're going to do. And the only thing, like, credentials are a way to get there, right? Like that's the thing. And so, and then separately, the credentialing apparatus rewards us for what we're good at, which is being conscientious and following rules. School is not about learning things or independent thought, as we all know. It's about following rules. It's about regurgitating the correct answer. The Indian education system has it down to a science. The American education system too, though. Even if you major in the liberal arts, you still don't get taught how to think. You have to learn how to think for yourself. You either have the inclination or you don't. Men are more able to think for yourselves and not be punished for it. Men don't punish each other for thinking for yourselves. Women also are not going to punish men, but women do punish each other for thinking for ourselves.
How so?
Because thinking for yourself means you are willing to stand outside the pack, and you're willing to take the risk of saying that you are more correct than the other person. Right. So if I'm in a group of girlfriends and some political topic comes up, I'm going to keep my mouth shut, because even though I've read more about the topic, very likely because I just read a lot and a lot of people don't read, my opinion doesn't matter. What matters is the socially acceptable opinion that everybody goes along with. So that's why it's so difficult to say that the emperor doesn't have any clothes. Men might be more willing to say that because there's less punishment among yourselves for saying it. But because women are in the public sphere now, that's why one reason men are so afraid of cancellation is because if they were to say that emperor has no clothes, then many women will come after them and call them racist, sexist, all sorts of things. Cancel culture is a feminine phenomenon. It wasn't like, if there are men who have gotten on the bandwagon, cancel culture is it need not be only carried out by women to be a feminine thing. To destroy someone's reputation for some stance they took is a very feminine thing to do.
Yeah.